The broken beginning. The crash was devastating. The starship, once a symbol of humanity's technological prowess, now lay in ruins on a distant planet. The crew, barely alive, staggered out of the wreckage, their bodies bruised and battered, their minds clouded with the shock of the disaster. The planet they had landed on was harsh, unforgiving. The sky above was dark, filled with ominous clouds, and the air thick with dust and smoke. Their ship, which had been their lifeline, was now just a heap of twisted metal. The humans had been on a mission to explore the far reaches of the galaxy, but everything had gone wrong. A freak asteroid storm had appeared out of nowhere, tearing through the ship's hull and sending them spiraling toward this desolate planet. The ship's systems had failed, leaving them stranded without hope. The survivors knew they couldn't stay on the planet for long. Their food and water supplies were limited, and there was no sign of help coming. But the crew was not about to give up. They had survived worse before. Now, more than ever, they needed to stick together. They needed to find a way to survive. The first few days were chaos. Everyone was disoriented and fearful. They were in a foreign environment, with no idea where they were or what dangers lurked in the shadows. The crew had no choice but to start scavenging. The wreckage of their ship was scattered across the landscape. Pieces of technology and metal were everywhere, some of it still barely functional. The humans quickly realized that they needed every scrap of equipment they could find to stay alive. They scavenged the wreckage, searching for anything that could be useful. Among the twisted remains, they found the ship's engine cores, damaged but still holding some power. They found the ship's communications array, useless now, but the parts could be used to create something new. They found the storage pods, crushed and mangled, but they were still packed with tools, food, and medical supplies. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep them going. As the days passed, the crew worked together, using their skills to repair what they could. They set up makeshift shelters, relying on their knowledge of survival tactics to stay warm and fed. But despite their best efforts, it was clear that they couldn't survive on this planet forever. The resources they had were limited, and the planet offered little in terms of natural sustenance. Then, something strange happened. One of the engineers, a young woman named Captain Rylea, made a discovery that would change everything. While scavenging through the remains of the ship, she found something unexpected. An old, strange piece of metal. It was different from anything they had encountered before. The metal was a dark, shimmering substance, unlike the ordinary alloys used in the ship's construction. It had a strange, almost otherworldly energy to it, pulsing faintly beneath the surface. At first, Captain Rylea thought it was just a fragment of some alien technology, but as she examined it closer, she realized something incredible. The metal was rare. Unlike anything found in human space, it seemed to have the ability to channel energy in ways that their technology could not understand. It was more advanced than anything they had ever seen. Captain Rylea brought the metal to the other engineers, hoping they could make sense of it. They were skeptical at first. They had no idea what this substance was, or how they could use it. But as they worked with it, they discovered its potential. This metal was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It could store and amplify energy, making it a perfect candidate for powering a weapon or a ship. With this discovery, a spark of hope was reignited among the crew. For the first time since the crash, they believed they had a chance. The metal could be the key to their survival. But they needed more. They needed to find a way to use this material to build something that could protect them from the dangers of the planet and beyond. As they began to gather more pieces of this strange metal, the crew started discussing a bold idea. What if they could build a warship? A ship that could defend them against any threats. A ship that could take them off this planet and back into space. The idea was insane. They were stranded, with no resources and limited knowledge of the alien technology that could help them. But the crew had always been resourceful. They had survived countless challenges before. They knew they could do it again. As they worked together, using the wreckage of their starship and the strange alien metal, the humans began to imagine the impossible. They would build a warship, a ship that could rival the greatest fleets in the galaxy, a ship made from nothing but scraps, yet powerful enough to strike fear into the hearts of any who faced it. The work was difficult. Every piece they salvaged was precious, and the crew had to be careful with every decision. But with each day, the dream began to take shape. The pieces were coming together, and the crew could see the outline of what would become the mightiest warship in the galaxy. But the journey ahead would not be easy. They had no idea what dangers lay ahead, or how they would overcome the challenges of building such a ship with so few resources. But there was one thing they knew for certain. They would not give up. They had come this far, and they would do whatever it took to turn their dream into reality. And so, from the ashes of their broken ship, they began to craft something that would change the course of the galaxy forever, a warship that would make them feared across the stars. The first spark of hope. The discovery of the mysterious alien metal was only the beginning. The crew knew they had stumbled upon something extraordinary, but they had no idea how to unlock its full potential. For the first time since the crash, a glimmer of hope sparked within them. The harsh reality of their situation hadn't changed. They were still stranded on a desolate planet with limited resources. But now, they had a purpose. The idea of building a warship to escape and protect themselves from the unknown dangers of the planet seemed possible. Captain Relia and the engineering team worked day and night, trying to figure out how the alien metal could be used. The strange substance, though beautiful in its shimmering dark hue, was unlike anything they had encountered before. It didn't behave the way any metal they knew did. They tested it, analyzed it, and ran countless simulations. It was stronger than anything they could produce, but it also emitted an energy pulse that was both powerful and unpredictable. They had to be careful. Despite the challenges, Captain Relia felt the growing excitement among her team. The engineers, once hesitant, were now fully invested in the project. There was something deeply motivating about the idea of creating something from nothing, of turning this wreckage into a force that could alter the course of their lives. It was a challenge, yes, but it was also their only chance of survival. This warship, made from scraps of their broken ship, and this mysterious alien metal, was their ticket to a future beyond this dead planet. But with hope came danger. The crew knew that their activity wouldn't go unnoticed. The planet's surface was harsh, but it was not empty. Hostile creatures roamed the desolate lands, and they had already encountered signs of alien life. Signs that suggested they were not alone. As the crew worked on the warship, the tension mounted. They needed to move quickly. They couldn't afford to waste time. Every day spent on this planet brought them closer to danger. One night, as Captain Relia was reviewing the progress reports in her makeshift command center, one of the scouts returned with troubling news. They had encountered a group of alien scavengers, a ruthless band of mercenaries who preyed on survivors of crashed ships. These creatures, with their sharp teeth and gleaming weapons, were known for picking apart starships and leaving nothing behind. If they discovered the humans were attempting to build something formidable, they would stop at nothing to take it for themselves. It was clear that the clock was ticking. Relia gathered her team and quickly devised a plan to accelerate their efforts. They would have to move the warship's construction underground. The surface of the planet was too dangerous, and they couldn't risk being discovered. They had the knowledge and the technology to create something incredible, but they needed to work in secret. As the team dug into the planet's rocky ground, using salvaged tools and equipment, they began assembling the ship's components piece by piece. The more they worked, the more the warship began to take shape. The sleek, sharp edges of the ship's hull reflected the crew's determination. It wasn't just a machine. It was a symbol of their resilience, their refusal to be beaten by their circumstances. But even in the secrecy of their underground bunker, there was a growing sense of fear. The scavengers were still out there, and they knew it wouldn't be long before the alien mercenaries discovered their hidden base. The crew didn't have much time. Captain Rillian knew they had to finish the ship and test its power before the scavengers found them. But there was still one major obstacle. They needed to find a source of energy powerful enough to fuel the warship and make it operational. The alien metal, despite its incredible properties, still wasn't enough to power the warship on its own. They needed something more. Desperate, the crew explored the surrounding planet for any resources they could find. One day, one of the engineers stumbled upon a massive underground cavern. The cavern was filled with glowing crystals that pulsed with energy. These crystals seemed to resonate with the same energy that the alien metal contained. It was a long shot, but it might just work. Rillia and her team rushed to collect the crystals, transporting them back to the hidden base. They carefully integrated the crystals into the warship's core systems, hoping that the energy would be enough to power the ship. The crew worked tirelessly, knowing that every second mattered. Every decision could mean the difference between life and death. As the warship's systems powered up, a wave of electricity surged through the hull, lighting up the ship's interior with a soft, eerie glow. The engines hummed with life. The weapon systems activated, sending bursts of energy through the air. The warship was alive. But just as the final tests were about to be completed, a loud, distant roar echoed through the caverns. The scavengers had found them. They were coming. The crew had no choice now but to complete the warship and prepare for battle. They had built something incredible, but would it be enough to defend them from the scavengers and the unknown dangers that awaited them? The tension in the air was thick as the crew readied themselves for the inevitable confrontation. They had spent days building something that could change their fate. But now, they were about to find out if it could truly protect them from the dangers of the galaxy. As Captain Rillia stared at the warship, now fully operational, she felt a mix of pride and fear. It was their greatest achievement, but it might also be their greatest gamble. Would it be enough to save them? Or would it be destroyed before they even had the chance to escape? The warship, their hope, now stood ready for its first test. The next few moments would determine their future. The discovery of the ancient blueprint. The warship was taking shape. The crew had made incredible progress, and their hope had grown with every piece they added to the ship. But the fear of discovery still loomed over them. They knew they were racing against time. They had built something powerful, but the scavengers were relentless, and their discovery of the warship would mean their end. Yet despite the constant threat, the crew pressed on, determined to finish what they had started. As Captain Rillia walked through the construction site, inspecting the warship's progress, one of the engineers, Tarek, approached her with something strange in his hands. It looked like a fragment of an old, weathered datapad, something that didn't belong with the rest of the wreckage. Tarek's voice trembled with excitement. "Captain, you need to see this." Rillia took the datapad from Tarek and carefully examined the broken screen. It was partially damaged, but there were still enough details visible to make out the contents. The datapad contained an ancient set of blueprints, far older than any technology the crew had ever encountered. These blueprints depicted a warship far more advanced than anything humanity could build, but with a design similar to the one they were trying to create. It was as if these long-lost builders had known exactly what they were trying to achieve, but with technology far beyond their reach. Tarek's voice shook with awe as he explained what he had uncovered. "This blueprint, it's an advanced starship design. It's like a blueprint for something even more powerful than the warship we're building. It was made by a civilization that no longer exists. Whoever created this ship had technology we can't even begin to understand." Rillia's heart raced as she processed the information. The ancient civilization that had left behind these blueprints had clearly been far ahead of humanity's technology. The design was unlike anything they had ever seen. A massive warship with weapons that could wipe out entire fleets and shields capable of withstanding attacks from the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. The problem was, the blueprints were incomplete. Vital sections were missing, making it impossible to recreate the ship with just this information. Tarek scrolled through the pad, eyes scanning for anything that might give them a clue as to where they could find the missing pieces. Then he found something. A fragmented message. It was a set of coordinates, but the rest of the message was lost in the data corruption. The coordinates pointed to a place far from their current location, a location deep within an unknown part of the galaxy, a place no one had ever explored before. Riley's mind raced. Could this be their answer? The missing pieces they needed to finish the warship. It was a long shot, but it was the only lead they had. If they could find the rest of the blueprints or the technology required to complete their ship, they would have a chance to survive. But there was a problem. The coordinates led them to a dangerous part of the galaxy, a region known for its hostile environments and merciless inhabitants. To reach the location, they would have to pass through uncharted space, facing challenges that could cost them their lives. After a tense meeting with the crew, it was decided they would go after the missing pieces. Time was running out, and the scavengers were getting closer. There was no turning back now. The warship had to be completed, and this was their only shot. The crew quickly prepared for the journey. They couldn't risk taking the warship with them. It was still too incomplete, and they couldn't afford to leave it vulnerable to attack. Instead, they packed up what they could carry, taking only the essentials: food, water, and tools for the journey ahead. They knew the trek would be perilous. They didn't know what dangers awaited them along the way, but they had no choice. As they set out into the unknown, the planet's surface grew more barren, and the dangers of the journey became more apparent. Strange, hostile creatures roamed the landscape, and the constant tension of being hunted by the scavengers never left them. Every noise, every shadow, made them nervous, wondering if this would be the moment they were discovered. Days turned into weeks as the crew traveled across the alien planet, tracking down the coordinates they had uncovered. They journeyed through rocky landscapes, dense forests, and treacherous caves, facing the harsh environment with nothing but their determination to keep them going. Along the way, they uncovered more remnants of the ancient civilization, each discovery further proving how far advanced this lost culture had been. The ruins they found were filled with strange artifacts and technology that the crew could barely comprehend. Each piece they discovered brought them closer to unlocking the mystery of this forgotten civilization. Finally, after weeks of traveling, they arrived at the location described in the blueprint. It was an ancient city, buried deep within a vast underground cavern, hidden away from the world above. The city was crumbling, its once great structures now reduced to rubble. But amidst the ruins, they found what they had been searching for: the missing pieces of the blueprint. They found more data pads, more fragments of the ship's design, and a mysterious energy core unlike anything they had ever seen. With the data in hand, the crew returned to their base, ready to complete their warship. But even as they celebrated their success, the scavengers were still out there. They were closing in fast. The crew knew they didn't have much time. The final pieces were in place, and the warship was almost ready. But would it be enough to protect them from the dangers that awaited? As Captain Relia stood before the warship, now fully realized with the new blueprints, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and dread. They had created something incredible, but they had also made themselves a target. The scavengers, the hostile creatures, and the dangers of the unknown galaxy were all closing in. Their only hope was that the warship would be strong enough to survive what was to come. The countdown to their final battle had begun. A desperate search for resources. The crew returned to their underground base with the precious data they had recovered, the missing pieces of the blueprint, and the mysterious energy core. They were exhausted, but there was a renewed sense of urgency in the air. They had gathered the necessary knowledge and resources, but their warship wasn't ready yet. They needed more, something to power the ship and make it fully operational. The energy core they had found could only provide so much power. They needed a sustainable source of energy that could fuel the warship for its long journey through the galaxy. Captain Relia stood at the heart of their makeshift command center, staring at the maps and data they had gathered. The scavengers were still out there, closing in on their position with each passing day. They couldn't afford to waste any more time. The warship had to be ready, but without a reliable energy source, it would never leave the ground. The crew knew the only chance they had was to find an ancient energy deposit deep within the planet's core. According to the data they had uncovered, this planet wasn't just a barren wasteland. Hidden beneath its surface were rare energy crystals, capable of powering a ship the size of the warship they were building. These crystals, though, were guarded by some of the most dangerous creatures known to the galaxy. They would have to venture deep into the heart of the planet, face unknown threats, and recover the energy crystals if they wanted their warship to become a reality. The tension among the crew was palpable. Everyone knew how dangerous this mission would be, but there was no other choice. The time for hesitation had passed. If they didn't act now, they might never get another chance. They gathered their weapons, loaded supplies, and prepared for the journey to the planet's core. This would be their final push to complete the warship, and their only chance at survival. Captain Relia addressed the crew before they set off. "We don't know what lies ahead, but we're all in this together. This is our last shot. We either get the energy we need, or we face the consequences." Her voice was steady, but there was a flicker of fear in her eyes. She knew the risks, but she also knew that their survival depended on their success. The crew set out, traveling through the planet's vast underground tunnels, which led to the planet's core. The passageways were narrow and winding, and the air grew thick with heat and pressure as they descended. Strange, glowing fungi illuminated their path, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The deeper they went, the more the environment changed. The temperature soared, and the air became difficult to breathe. The crew pushed forward, their resolve unbroken, determined to reach their goal. After days of traveling through the tunnels, they finally arrived at a massive underground cavern. The cavern was unlike anything they had seen before. It was filled with towering, glowing crystals that hummed with an unnatural energy. The crystals were scattered across the cavern, some as large as a house, their surfaces shimmering with bright, pulsing light. It was breathtaking and terrifying. The crew immediately began searching for the energy crystals they needed, but they weren't alone. The cavern was home to terrifying creatures, massive and fast, their eyes glowing in the dark. These predators, known as the Ravagers, were native to the planet's core. They had evolved to survive in the harsh, underground environment, and they were incredibly territorial. The crew's presence had not gone unnoticed. The first sign of danger came when a massive shadow moved across the cavern floor. Before anyone could react, a Ravager leaped from the shadows, its claws extended. The crew fought back with everything they had: guns, knives, and whatever weapons they could find. The battle was fierce. The Ravagers were relentless, fast, and deadly, but the humans had one advantage: their resourcefulness. They fought as a team, using their knowledge of the planet's environment to their advantage. They set traps, lured the creatures into narrow passages, and worked together to take them down one by one. Despite their victory, the crew knew they couldn't afford to waste time. More Ravagers were closing in, drawn by the sounds of the battle. They had to gather the energy crystals and get out before the creatures overwhelmed them. Riley led the charge, directing the crew to collect the largest crystals, the ones that would provide the energy they needed to power the warship. It wasn't easy. The crystals were deeply embedded in the rock, and extracting them required careful precision. The crew worked quickly, using the tools they had scavenged from the shipwreck and the technology they had gathered from the ancient ruins. The tension was high as they dug into the rock, knowing that the longer they stayed, the greater the risk of encountering more Ravagers. Finally, after hours of tense work, they had gathered enough crystals. The warship's energy core was fully charged, ready to power the ship for its first test flight. As they prepared to leave, a loud roar echoed through the cavern. The Ravagers were back, and they were angrier than ever. Captain Relia ordered the crew to retreat, their hands full with the precious energy crystals. They fought their way through the cavern, dodging the attacking Ravagers and making their way back to the tunnels. The battle was brutal, but the crew managed to escape, carrying the crystals with them. They emerged from the tunnels, battered and bruised but victorious. The return to their base was met with a mix of relief and triumph. They had secured the energy they needed, and the warship was now fully powered. There was no time to celebrate, though. The scavengers were still out there, and the final battle was fast approaching. The crew knew that they had built something incredible, but would it be enough to protect them from what was to come? The warship, now fully charged and ready for action, stood as the last hope for the crew. They had fought through every obstacle, hostile creatures, dangerous environments, and the constant threat of discovery by the scavengers. But now, with the energy they needed to power the ship, they could finally test their creation. The countdown to their final battle had begun. Building the beast. With the energy crystals secured and the warship's core now fully charged, the crew returned to their underground base, a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration in the air. Their survival depended on their ability to finish the warship and make it operational. Every moment mattered. The scavengers were getting closer, and they couldn't afford to let their progress slip. Captain Relia watched as the crew worked tirelessly, applying the knowledge they had gathered from the ancient blueprints and combining it with their own technology. The warship was taking shape, piece by piece, and each step brought them closer to their goal. But there were still so many unknowns. Would the ship actually work as they hoped? Could it survive the threats that were closing in on them? Every decision felt critical, and failure wasn't an option. The first order of business was reinforcing the warship's outer hull. The strange alien metal they had found in the wreckage, along with the advanced components they had scavenged from the ship's remains, provided a strong foundation. But Rylea and her engineers knew they had to make it stronger. They were certain that the scavengers would attack as soon as they discovered the warship's location. The hull had to be impervious to attack, and the ship's shields needed to be impenetrable. The team worked around the clock, fabricating the shielding systems. The alien technology embedded in the ship's structure seemed to resonate with the energy crystals, providing a strange synergy that they couldn't entirely explain. They had no choice but to trust it. Each successful test made them more confident that their creation would hold up when the time came. Meanwhile, the crew's scientists focused on the warship's weaponry. The blueprints they had discovered showed designs for powerful energy cannons and pulse weapons, capable of devastating entire fleets. The weapons were sophisticated, and their integration into the ship's systems was complicated. The crew was unsure if they had the resources to build all the weaponry as envisioned in the blueprints. They had no choice but to adapt, using the materials they had scavenged and innovating where they had to. With every completed weapon, the warship grew more fearsome. Rylea could see the light of determination in her crew's eyes. The project was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming their future. They weren't just building a ship. They were creating a weapon that would allow them to fight back. It was their chance to strike first, to take control of their fate. But with every step forward, the tension increased. The scavengers were still out there, and their presence loomed over the crew. Rylea didn't need to hear the reports to know that the scavengers were getting closer. It wasn't just the physical threat they posed that worried her. It was the fact that the longer they stayed hidden, the harder it would be to complete the ship. The crew worked in shifts, constantly testing the ship's systems, fine-tuning them, and working to ensure everything was as perfect as possible. They had built something incredible, but they had no way of knowing how it would perform in an actual battle. There were still many unknowns, but the ship was nearly ready. Every part was coming together. The engines fired up for the first time, sending a powerful hum through the underground base. The warship shook, and a wave of energy pulsed outward from the core. It was a moment of pure awe. For the first time, the warship truly felt alive. The crew gathered around, staring in disbelief. This was it. The ship had powered up. It had all of its weapons, shields, and systems online. It was ready. But there was no time to celebrate. The message was clear. The scavengers had found them. The alert came through the communication system. A fleet of alien ships, led by the scavenger warlord, was heading straight for their location. They were outnumbered, and they were running out of time. Captain Relia gathered the crew, her face a mixture of pride and determination. "The warship is ready," she said, her voice steady. "We've fought for this moment. Now we fight for our lives." The crew didn't hesitate. They moved into position, ready to launch the warship and take on the enemy. They knew that this would be their only chance to escape, to survive, and to show the galaxy that humanity could never be counted out. As the warship's engines roared to life, rising from the underground hangar and blasting through the surface, the crew felt the weight of their creation. It was no longer just a ship. It was a symbol of human resilience. With their hearts pounding, they prepared to face the scavenger fleet head-on. But there was one last hurdle to overcome: the unknown power of their enemies. The scavengers had their own weapons, their own technology, and their own experience in battle. They were formidable opponents, and the warship had yet to prove itself in a real fight. As the warship shot into the sky, the crew braced for the inevitable clash. Their hearts raced, but there was no turning back. The countdown to the final battle had begun. Would the warship live up to their hopes? Would it survive its first test? And most importantly, would it be enough to defend them from the scavengers and whatever dangers the galaxy might throw their way? In that moment, Captain Raelian knew that their fight had only just begun. The warship had been born from the ashes of a broken ship, forged from scrap, and the remnants of a destroyed future. Now it was their weapon, their hope, and their chance to make their mark on the galaxy. And they would not back down. The warship awakens. The air inside the warship hummed with energy as the crew made their final preparations. The massive ship had emerged from the ground like a beast, ready to roar into space. Its sleek, angular design gleamed under the artificial lights, an impressive feat of human ingenuity and borrowed alien technology. But despite all the work that had gone into its creation, there was still one huge question hanging over them. Would it work when they needed it most? The countdown to battle was imminent. Captain Relia stood in front of the massive viewport, staring out into the blackness of space, knowing the scavenger fleet was closing in. Their sensors had picked up the movement of enemy ships, a whole armada, prepared to take what they had built. The crew had no illusions. This would be no simple fight. Their warship, although powerful, had yet to prove itself in combat. This would be its first test. The moment of truth arrived as Relia gave the order to launch. The warship's engines roared to life, propelling the massive ship into space at an incredible speed. It felt as though the entire universe was holding its breath. The ship shuddered slightly as the thrusters engaged, but there were no system failures. For the first time, the crew allowed themselves a moment of hope. They had built something truly remarkable, but now they had to make it perform. "All systems are green," the lead engineer called out, his voice steady but filled with excitement. "The shields are holding steady. Weapons are ready." Relia nodded. "Prepare for battle. I want a full weapons check as we engage the enemy." Outside, the scavenger fleet loomed large, its ships orbiting the planet, waiting for the humans to make their move. The alien warships were formidable, sleek and deadly, armed with powerful energy weapons and advanced shields. The scavenger fleet had once crushed entire civilizations, and now it was their turn to face humanity's will to survive. As the warship moved closer to the enemy fleet, Relia's mind raced. She trusted her crew, but there was a constant fear gnawing at her. What if the warship's weapons didn't work as expected? What if the shields couldn't withstand the enemy's attacks? They had no way of knowing until the battle began. The scavenger warlord, a ruthless leader known as Salvor, commanded his fleet to advance. His ships began to fire warning shots across the warship's bow, and the crew could feel the vibrations of the impacts shaking the ship. Riley gripped the command chair, her knuckles white. They had no time to waste. It was time to fight back. "Return fire," she ordered. The crew's fingers flew over the control panels. Energy weapons on the warship powered up, and a brilliant burst of blue energy shot out from the ship's forward cannons. The blast collided with one of the scavenger ships, sending it spiraling out of control. The force of the explosion sent shockwaves through the battlefield. "Direct hit," the weapons officer yelled in triumph. The warship had fired its first shot, and it was a victory. But the scavenger fleet didn't retreat. Instead, they retaliated with full force, unleashing wave after wave of powerful energy blasts. The warship's shields flared as they absorbed the incoming fire, the metal hull vibrating with the force of the impacts. The shields held for now, but each hit drained the energy reserves. "Shields are at 75%, reported the systems officer, his voice tense. "We need to take out their flagship quickly, or we'll lose the advantage." Captain Riley's eyes flicked to the enemy flagship, a massive, heavily armored ship that loomed above the rest of the fleet. It was clearly the heart of the scavenger fleet, and if they could disable it, they would have a chance to defeat the rest. "Target the flagship," she commanded. "All cannons, focus fire on their command center." The warship's weapons powered up again, and this time, the full force of their energy beams ripped through the darkness of space. The cannons fired, hitting the scavenger flagship directly in its command center. The explosion was massive, sending shockwaves through the fleet. The flagship staggered, but it didn't go down without a fight. "Flagship is still operational," the officer reported, frustration in his voice. "It's heavily shielded." Relia's gaze hardened. They couldn't let up. The battle was just beginning, and the scavengers were relentless. "Keep firing. We're not stopping until that ship is disabled." The warship continued to fire, but the enemy was growing more desperate. Zalvor, in his flagship, ordered a full assault on the warship, sending several smaller ships to swarm it from all directions. The battle became chaotic as the warships exchanged fire, beams of energy lighting up the space around them. The warship's shields flickered dangerously, but they held. Just. "We've taken damage to the aft sections," the engineering officer reported, her voice strained. "We need to reinforce it, or we won't last much longer." "Maintain shields," Rylea commanded. "Focus fire on the smaller ships attacking our rear. We can't let them swarm us." The crew responded with practiced precision. The warship's forward cannons fired again, destroying one of the smaller ships, but more kept coming. Zalvor wasn't backing down. He had been in too many battles to let a single warship stand in his way. But just as the crew was beginning to feel the weight of the battle, something unexpected happened. The warship's core began to resonate with the alien crystals, sending a surge of energy through the ship's systems. The weapons and shields powered up beyond their normal limits. The crew felt the shift, and Captain Rylea quickly realized what was happening. The energy from the crystals, it's stabilizing the ship's core, Rylea said aloud, amazed. "The warship is becoming more powerful than we thought." With this new surge of power, the warship's weapon systems fired with unmatched intensity. The flagship, now vulnerable from the constant barrage, finally began to break apart. The massive scavenger ship exploded in a brilliant flash, the debris scattering in every direction. "Flagship destroyed," the weapons officer shouted in triumph. Without their command ship, the scavenger fleet began to falter. The remaining ships were no match for the power of the warship. One by one, they were disabled, either by the relentless barrage of energy beams or by the tactical genius of Rylea and her crew. The scavengers, once so confident in their victory, began to retreat, their morale shattered. But the battle wasn't over yet. The warship had proven its power, but the crew knew that the galaxy was still full of dangers. This victory was just the beginning. As the scavenger fleet retreated into the void, Rylea allowed herself a brief moment of relief. They had won this battle, but the war for their future was far from over. "We've done it," Rylea said, her voice full of pride, but tempered with the realization of what was still to come. But this is only the first step. We've proven that humanity can stand strong. Now we fight to take back what's ours. The final battle and triumph. The warship hung in the silence of space, its systems humming with power as the last remnants of the scavenger fleet scattered into the distance. The battle was over, but the cost of victory was still settling in. Captain Raylia stood at the bridge, her eyes scanning the damage reports, while the crew worked to stabilize their ship and assess any injuries. The scavengers, having been dealt a crushing blow, had retreated. But Raylia knew that this wasn't the end. It was only a matter of time before another fleet, a more dangerous one, would come for them. The galaxy was a vast and perilous place, and the scavengers were just one faction among many. They had won today, but there were still countless threats out there. The crew took a moment to breathe, their exhaustion from the long battle weighing heavily on them. But in the back of their minds, they knew they couldn't afford to stay complacent. They had fought to build this warship, and now it had proven itself in battle. The question was, what would they do next? What would humanity do now that they had the power to defend themselves? Raylia stood before the crew, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "We've done it," she said, her gaze sweeping over the team that had fought so hard to get them here. "This warship is more than just a symbol of our survival. It's a testament to the strength of humanity. But we've only scratched the surface of what we can do." Her words echoed across the bridge, and for a brief moment, the crew shared a look of unity. They had come from nothing, stranded on a hostile planet, with no resources and no hope. And now they had created the most feared warship in the galaxy. But the true victory wasn't just in the destruction of the scavenger fleet. It was in the determination to rise up, to fight, and to prove that humanity could endure. "We have the power now," Raylia continued, her voice rising with confidence. "We've shown the galaxy what we can do. And now it's time to reclaim our place in the stars." With the scavenger fleet retreating into the far reaches of space, Captain Raylia made the bold decision to pursue them, not to destroy them further, but to make a statement. The galaxy would no longer see humans as weak, stranded on a forgotten planet, relying on scraps for survival. No, humanity was now a force to be reckoned with. The crew worked together, making repairs and recalibrating the warship's systems. They refueled and reloaded their weapons, preparing for whatever came next. As the warship soared into the unknown, the crew's resolve hardened. They had taken their first step towards freedom. And now they would take the fight to those who thought they could crush humanity. As they ventured deeper into space, they encountered more dangers. Alien factions, once indifferent to the fate of humanity, began to take notice. The warship became a beacon of fear and awe, its mere presence enough to send waves of caution through the galaxy. The scavengers had learned that humans weren't to be underestimated, and soon, other factions followed suit. Weeks turned into months as the crew continued to test their ship's limits. They explored unknown territories, found hidden threats, and made allies along the way. They proved time and time again that humanity could rise above any challenge, outsmart any enemy, and build something powerful from nothing. The warship became more than just a tool for survival. It became a symbol of hope for anyone who felt oppressed, abandoned, or forgotten by the galaxy's ruling powers. But despite the growing influence of their warship, Captain Raylia knew that their true challenge had only just begun. As they traveled farther into the galaxy, they began to encounter larger, more organized fleets, some not hostile at first, but willing to negotiate. Others, however, saw humanity's growing power as a threat, and they would do whatever it took to eliminate the potential they represented. Raylia knew that the future of humanity was uncertain, and that every victory came with new risks. But one thing was clear. They had proven something that would change the galaxy forever. The human spirit, once thought weak and fragile, was now a force that could shape the future. They had taken nothing, just scraps, wreckage, and the ashes of their broken ship, and built something powerful enough to challenge the mightiest forces in the galaxy. As they drifted through the stars, Captain Relia stood at the helm, her heart swelling with pride for her crew. The warship, their warship, was no longer just a dream. It was a reality. It was a testament to their ingenuity, their resilience, and their unwavering will to survive. "Prepare for the next journey," Relia said to the crew, her voice full of determination. "The galaxy is vast, and we've only just begun to explore it. We've built this ship, but now we will forge our place among the stars. We will show the galaxy that humanity's future is bright. We will make them see no one can ever underestimate us again." The crew gathered around her, united in their purpose. Together, they had built something incredible, and together, they would continue to rise. The galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had been forged in the fires of adversity, and now they were ready to take their place as one of the galaxy's mightiest powers. The final battle had been won, but the true adventure was only just beginning. And as the warship sailed into the unknown, there was no doubt in their minds. They had become a force to be reckoned with, and they would carve their own path through the stars.